Support for this program is provided in part by Guido's Fresh Marketplace. Welcome to The Natural Cook. I'm Anna Gershenson. Today we have a very special episode. Lauren Piotrowski.
Hello.
Hi. She is my guest, and you can see all the beautiful herbs and vegetables and greens that she has brought here today. And she actually is the curator of this beautiful produce because she is the head gardener and also manager of the Community Supported Agriculture CSA at Hancock Shaker Village. And today we are going to be talking about what is so special about eating locally and seasonally, why it is of utmost importance to our health, and also making two dishes. One is the cabbage. I actually decided to make something a little different. You can rewatch my previous episode with Lauren where we made a little salad with red cabbage. But you can make cabbage steaks with a whole head of green cabbage or red cabbage for that matter. And the second dish will be roasted squash. It is Delicata squash. It has a very short season, right, I believe. So I always try to catch it as soon as I see it appearing and use it as much as I can.
And those came out of the field 2 days ago.
2 days ago, wonderful.
You caught them quickly this time.
Yes, excellent. Okay, Lauren, so you know, I will pass the baton to you because I would like you to tell us you are growing all these beautiful vegetables at Hancock Shaker Village. And we know about the traditions that they passed on to us. And I see how many visitors come and support Hancock Shaker Village. It makes me very, very happy that they are interested in continuing. And now there is really a bounty of vegetables that didn't exist before.
Right. You emailed me and said, what do we have ready for the show? And a list this long. It's September. We haven't had a frost yet. So everything is growing. Everything is thriving. We still have tomatoes. We even still have some basil at the farm. But our fall veggies are starting to come in now too. So this is a fun time to cook because things that may not cross paths, you can create some cool recipes with them.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about cooking with a recipe later. Yes. But what I wanted to show you is that, first of all, when you buy your cabbage, it's about a 2-pound head of cabbage. And you should feel that it's, heavy for its weight. Also, if it's a little lighter, actually for this recipe, it might not be so bad. It means that there are more spaces there, and it will be easier to cook it because it will be roasting at 400-degree oven, which I'm preheating the oven now. And I cut off the little tip, and you are going to be cutting it into steaks, like making 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 1 inch, depending on how much time you have for roasting, because 1-inch steak will take you probably up to an hour. And then just cutting them into steaks, having your baking sheet. And I actually have prepared here a baking sheet that is lined. You can line it with parchment or you can line it with foil. And then we will just rub it with some garlic, grated garlic, and season and olive oil and put it to roast, for 1/2 an hour at 400 degrees, and then we'll flip it. So it's really something that you can do easily and don't need a lot of time. You just need to be there.
Right, and that's what I need to hear in the middle of the growing season. How do I take a beautiful head of cabbage and get it on my plate without too much energy and too much work.
Yes.
And like the beets, our members get tomatoes, cucumbers. They know what to do with them, but sometimes we're not sure what to do with the cabbage, and we've already tried coleslaw, we've already done this, we're not going to make gawumpkies like my grandma used to make.
Right.
So what's another way we can use a cabbage quickly and easily and enjoy it?
If we can make a steak out of meat.
Yes, let's make steaks out of cabbage.
Now we can make steak out of cabbage.
The cow likes this recipe too.
Okay, so we will proceed with the recipe. In the meantime, we can talk about, the special soil that you have at Hancock Shaker Village, and how you mentioned to me in our conversation that you are comparing your vegetables, with wine growers who use this term terroir, right?
Yes.
So please tell me more about what that means.
So sometimes people will get veggies from our CSA, and they're used to have been buying them in the supermarket. And sometimes from the supermarket, not always, but they're grown in these big fields in California. They are watered on a weekly schedule, and they all kind of have a uniform taste. If you notice, if you're buying local, fresh veggies that are in season or at the end of their season, they really can have a distinct taste. And in winemaking, they call that terroir. It has to do with the quality of the soil and also the weather of the place that they're growing. And I think it applies to veggies too. These are living things, and if we have a rainy season, the flavor of some things like the tomatoes might be milder. If it's dry and hot, the flavors get concentrated, not only in the tomatoes, but in some things like the kale. I had some kale in May when it was so hot and dry, and I bit into it, and boy, it knocked my socks off. I didn't give it to the CSA members that week. I waited for it to mellow out a little.
Yes. This is, I actually have noticed the same thing, that the kales, even the Russian kale, which is a fairly mild kale, it still has a little bite.
It's strong.
Yes,
strong.
and I welcome that, because bitter flavor is something that our livers need to cleanse themselves, and it's really good for your palate, and it's good for developing your palate. Don't be afraid of bitter flavor. Yes.
And you can enjoy the different tastes that our veggies bring us throughout the season.
Yes.
Our corn was ready this year, and I was going out in the field pulling an ear and biting into it. And at first it just tastes a little green, just not quite ready.
Yes.
I come out a couple days later, I see the crows have been pecking at it.
Right.
Oh, it's sweet, it's full of flavor, but it's still not that kind of corn where you can get a whole mouthful. A week later, it's perfect.
Yes.
The next week it's horsey, but that's how my mom likes it, so we still pick it. And then it gets, my boss, Billy Mangiardi, a local farmer, says, it's in the dent. Then that's when you give it to the cows. So these vegetables, their flavors, their tastes, their textures change throughout the season.
Well, this is, like you said, they are living things.
Yeah.
And
they get old like we do.
Exactly.
They get bitter.
Yes. And their flavor changes.
Right, exactly.
And actually, we have your honey here. Speaking about bitter, we need to sweeten.
We do.
So can you tell me more about the honey? But first, I want to tell our viewers what I'm doing. So I grated some garlic, and then I just kind of rubbed it on both sides. And now I will season it with salt and pepper, and then you can use a pastry brush to put olive oil, brush it on both sides, or you can do it with your hand like I will do today. And then put it in the oven for 30 minutes, and then you will flip it in another 30 minutes. What I have noticed is that, and I keep water nearby, is that when your cabbage seems like a little tough and you want it to get softer, then I will take, grab a little water into my hand and sprinkle it over to give it more moisture, so that it would promote better cooking, because some cabbages can be really, really tight.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
So our honey, we have our own, I don't know what a group of beehives is called. We have our own beehives at Shaker Village.
Yes.
They're managed by a wonderful guy, Joe, who makes this Giuseppe honey. And I love to eat the honey from Shaker because it takes on the character as well of the season and what I'm growing this year. The year I used a lot of buckwheat as a cover crop during that hot, dry season. And the honey will be more concentrated and strong in flavor. This is probably from last season, but I'm looking forward to tasting what I planted in the garden in the honey as well.
Well, by looking at the color of the honey, can you tell anything about the honey?
I'm not a honey
Right,
maker, but I
right.
think from looking at this one, it looks like a spring
Right,
honey, and then the
yes.
darker is the fall honey.
Yes, I had actually an episode with Richard Clapper, who is a honey maker, and we learned so much about it.
And so, yeah, the taste of the honey will change throughout the season. But some vegetables actually improve as they're in the ground longer. They can mellow out, and some need a frost, like parsnips or carrots, to really get that perfect amount of sweetness.
Well, I see that you brought these gorgeous carrots.
Yeah, there's some carrots we
Well,
have grown.
I see that they look very different than the carrots that we buy at the supermarket. They're kind of, can you take them
these
and bring
ones are
them?
a little bit
Yes.
shorter and stouter. We grow 2 varieties of carrots at Shaker this year. We have a little bit of rocky soil there, so the long, really skinny ones
Yes.
don't. Well, they grow just fine, but getting them out of the soil can be a little bit of a
Yes.
challenge. So we grow the scarlet nantes and the red cord chantenay. This is one of those.
They're probably more flavorful as a result of them not, or is it because the deeper, I know I wanted to talk to you a little bit about energy of food as well, right?
Right.
And I know that the carrots, like the longer they go, I know that the deeper energy they get into themselves. So
they get sweeter and earthier, and
Right.
some of that is about where they go in the soil. They can get
Yes.
down into some of those layers and pull up
Yes.
some of those minerals, and some
Yes.
of it's about the time they are in their growing season.
Yes.
We do pick carrots early, but they are a much lighter taste and a lighter texture. They're kind of bright and springy. I like a well-aged carrot myself.
Yes, yes, I do too. Well, now we are going to pass on to our beautiful Delicata squash. And what is so special about Delicata squash is that it's very sweet. They are all sweet, of course, but the skin is edible.
Yes.
And this is what I love about it, because a lot of people don't like peeling.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when you have like butternut squash, for example, you can just cut it in half and then put it cut side down. You can season it and brush it with some olive oil and bake it like at 350, 75, 400, whatever. You really can be flexible,
Right.
and then scoop out that flesh. But this one, you really don't need to. All you need to do is just cut it into half-inch pieces and roast it. And right now, I'm going to show you how I'm doing it. You just need to get rid of seeds and then place it on a baking sheet and toss them with some olive oil. So I'm scooping the seeds with my spoon.
If you want to save those seeds, I'll bring them to the compost at Shaker Village.
Absolutely, yes.
We throw our seeds and things like that into the compost, and sometimes we get some crazy squashes growing out of them.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It
Maybe
is
I should be saving them at home and bringing them to you, because I don't live that far from you guys.
Yeah.
Okay,
definitely.
so we will just scoop everything from there. Okay.
So the Delicata are a squash that I enjoy. I feel like they're sort of a bridge between the summer squash and the traditional winter squash. Just when you feel like if you have another zucchini, you're not going to know what to do with it. They finally finish, and here come the Delicatas.
The interesting thing is that, to give a tip to people who don't know what to do with their zucchini, even though we're not really cooking zucchini today, is that just recently I came across, one of the cookbook writers, Lucas Volger. He posted on Instagram a recipe with zucchini that was just roasted in the oven on one side and then on the other side, and then he made like a little tomato sauce, and then he drizzled that sauce on the zucchini and some honey
That sounds fantastic.
and basil and goat cheese.
That sounds fantastic.
And this was like a discovery for me, because I never thought of putting honey on the zucchini.
Oh, yeah.
But probably it's pretty inert in terms of flavor. But probably honey won't hurt this squashes either.
No, it would probably be
Yes.
a nice addition.
Okay, so let's talk about energy of food. How, what we mean by seasonally, when we have lettuces growing
Right.
in the spring and early summer, and we enjoy them, and then we go to these root vegetables that grow and take a long time to actually mature, and why we switch to them, and why it's really good for us to eat them in the winter.
Right. I enjoy eating seasonally, mainly number one, because it tastes amazing. When the food is from your doorstep and it is at the height of the season, it's going to taste so different than if you're getting it a month or two early from a couple states down south of us. I go into the store and I see the asparagus there really, really early, and I want it so bad in the spring, but I wait till it's coming up outside my back door before I let myself have it. And I'm not sure if this is right or not, but I sort of feel like our bodies need different vitamins at different time of the season, and the vegetables that are at their height at that time of the season are probably a pretty good clue of what our body needs.
Yes.
So I know in spring, when I am just like waking up from the winter, I'm feeling like logy, I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling heavy, I'm really craving those like bitter dandelion greens the minute they're out in my lawn, and I'm just swiping them up. And then come the lettuces
Yes.
and all of the lovely greens. So those kind of clues can really lead us in the right direction for eating seasonally, for taste and also for health.
Yes, and speaking about those dandelions, this is exactly that ties into the liver that I mentioned.
Right.
Because liver actually gets cleansed
Right.
during the spring.
Yes,
It's
that
been
makes sense.
stagnant in the winter,
Right.
and so it gets cleansed, and it loves bitter flavors. That's what cleanses, as well as sour flavors.
Right.
So lemon and
Right.
Right.
Dandelion greens.
Yes.
But don't eat the dandelions now. They'll taste pretty
yes.
sad.
Okay, so I did, you saw what I did. I just seasoned with salt and pepper. What I do is I take a lick to my vegetable.
Don't put it back on the pan after
Right.
you do it.
because I want to make sure that it's seasoned well. And this is how I do it. You can just take like a little, cut
I don't
off a
mind
little
if you do
piece.
it.
Yes, a little piece, right? You can lick your piece, and I will lick my piece.
I'm just going to eat it. It tastes good.
Yeah, it does taste good. Thank you.
I like the sweetness on there.
Well, actually, I think that it's seasoned pretty well.
It is.
Yeah, okay. So we will stick it into the oven. So it goes in the oven for also 400 degrees. So you can cook the cabbage and the squash at the same time, just on different levels.
Good.
And of course, squash will take faster. So probably after 15 minutes, you can check and just flip it on the other side, the squash, and you will see that I'll show you once that we can proceed with it, what it looks like, and then we'll definitely show you the treatment that we give to the squash. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a little break so that we can let the cabbage and squash cook. And then when we return, we will see what they look like when they are ready. So in the meantime, just remember that they will be getting a flip after like 20 minutes, depending on your vegetable. So don't forget that they have to be turned over.
Perfect.
Okay,
All right.
So we'll see you in a minute.
And you're on.
So our vegetables were happily cooking, roasting in the oven. and we are almost ready to pull them out.
Good.
And see what kind of treatment we are going to give them.
Good.
And in the meantime, maybe you can tell us more about, talk about cooking with recipes or without recipes while I'm doing this. And by the way, I wanted to tell you about this magic combination that squashes have, like a affinity with sage.
Right.
And sage is the herb that I think is very, very underused. It's a medicinal herb, and Shakers were growing medicinal herbs. And it's also very potent.
It is.
Right, so you have to use it sparingly, but then remember that it is your friend, and don't forget to use it.
Right.
And Lauren will tell us more about how she uses sage.
Yeah, at Shaker Village, we give out sage to our CSA members a couple times a year, but fall is the year where the season where it really pairs beautifully with dishes. And at our medicinal herb garden, right at the front of it, we have maybe like a 10 by 20 patch of sage, and people come in and they say, "What a huge patch of sage you have." And a funny story is that the Shakers right there at Hancock used to grow 4 acres of only sage. They would dry it, powder it up, and sell it to a local German sausage factory. So that's bigger than the size of my whole central vegetable garden, just sage. So we don't have too much. And another thing is sometimes when I'm stressed out at work, I'll grab a couple leaves off the sage and just kind of put it around myself. It seems to calm me down.
Well, I know that there are healers who come to clear your space,
Yeah, they'll burn
to
sage.
get rid of the bad stagnant energy or whatever happened in your dwelling.
Right.
And they bring the sage, and that's how they do it. And
That's
then, yes, it works.
I have stress in the carrot patch, brush it away, go to the potato.
Yes, give yourself, exactly, give yourself a break.
A little break.
Yeah, so I'm chopping them now. I will put some butter, and I will cook the sage in the butter. So it's also a good idea maybe to brown your butter. Make sure that it does not burn, because it can burn easily. And brown butter has this yummy, nutty flavor.
Yeah, that's such a New
Yes.
England flavor, the brown
Right,
butter and
right,
sage.
yes. So this is what we are doing. In the meantime, please.
So with the brown butter and sage, it has me just thinking about all these squash that are coming in.
Yes.
The Delicatas were the first out of the field.
Yes.
We had one there before for you. The acorns.
Yes.
They're coming out. They're a wonderful squash. The buttercups, it's the first time I grew them. The Burgess buttercup is a delicious squash that looks very ugly. I've never cooked one before. I'm excited to try this season. And next, the butternuts. I want to get them out of the field before our first real true frost, so that's going to happen probably tomorrow at work. Along with those variety of squashes, we grew a variety of pumpkins this year, the classic New England field pumpkin, the humongous one, and 2 really great varieties of sugar pumpkins for making pumpkin pie. So as you were talking about food energy, as we're gearing up for the long New England winter ahead of us, all these really nourishing, dense, cozy foods are coming onto our plate, really helping us to have what we need to make it through the long Berkshire winter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you have these vegetables,
Yes.
then you are thinking, how do I prolong them? How do I store them
Right.
so that I can enjoy them?
And that's a great thing for our CSA members, because sometimes they'll get at the end of the season 2, 3, maybe even more butternut or winter squash. And unless you have a root cellar, which I do at Shaker Village at home, really the best place is a place that's consistently cool, 55, 60 degrees, perhaps your basement, someplace that won't freeze, but that also has good air circulation and that's not too damp. And these squash will last the entire winter for you.
That's wonderful tip,
Yeah.
Lauren. So the squash, as you can see, it's nice and soft
Looks beautiful.
and a little crunchy also. I'm cooking my butter and keeping an eye on it because I don't want it to burn, and I can smell the sage. Actually, the aroma has subsided a little bit after I added. Could you smell it when I added it?
smells amazing.
Yes, yes.
The energy is cleared.
Right. Okay, we are totally brand new now.
We're brand new, ready to eat
Yes.
some squash.
Yes. So we'll put it on a platter, and I love having good Parmesan cheese
Oh, yum.
for cabbages, squashes. A little grating of it doesn't hurt, even though we'll have sage butter. So see, it has browned.
It's beautiful.
So I'll turn it off, and we will spoon it. We'll spoon it onto our sage. Okay. All right. Okay. You can just drizzle it over,
Beautiful.
and
You want me to grate some Parmesan?
Yes, that would be awesome.
Let's see how our cabbages are doing.
Yes, we'll check the cabbage, and we will do the same thing. I will do this with cabbage as well. A shaving of Parmesan.
I'll just do a little because we can always add more.
Right. Sounds good. Okay. So these are our cabbage steaks. So we can see they have browned, and they are
Beautiful.
soft. So you'll be eating them. You can just pull them apart with your hands if they are not too hot, and have it as a main course with some kind of grain, or have it as a accompaniment to your protein if you choose to eat. Like, for example, cod and cabbage go very nicely together.
Wonderful.
And I'm sure that this will be a very nice addition. So why don't you grate? You could also grate some of this cheese while the cabbage is
Oh, and
still
make it crispy.
right, and
That'd be
then you can return it to the oven for it to crisp up and to melt. And also, I put it on the other side. Why
It's
is
not
it
coming out
shaking?
fast.
Nothing is coming out, right? Okay, and what I would also like to do is just to give a little drizzle of honey.
Oh, that would be lovely.
Yeah, and then we'll see how it tastes, right? That's the most fun part. So did we talk about cooking with recipes and without recipes?
We didn't really touch much on that
Yes.
today, but maybe that'd be a thing for another show.
Yes, I think that's a great idea. I think that it's very intimidating for people to just go into the kitchen and without having a recipe to start manipulating their vegetables and not knowing what they are really doing. So I think that it's worth like another show together. All right, so let's see how it tastes. Would you like to grab
Yes,
a
please.
fork? Okay.
How about 25 seconds?
Oh, it's delicious. Wonderful.
The butter is so sweet, and it adds this nuttiness.
It's really nice.
And the squash is so chewy. Delicious. So I definitely would sprinkle more Parmesan cheese because it also will add saltiness. Okay, so
Thank you.
we'll taste this with you. So thank you for joining us. And
Thank you.
cook with us. Cook at home. Look at this show and cook with us.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Support for this program is provided in part by Guido's Fresh Marketplace.